then actually it's really, really important to have somewhere else you can go. We really believe that offices will be a key part in the future.
So I 100% agree with the first point you made, but I think it's a bullshit discussion. Achieving work-life balance is not a good thing.
Innovation Rockstars. Innovation Rockstars.
Today, we are joined by Tom Kegode from the Lloyds Banking Group.
Hi, and welcome back to Innovation Rockstars. My name is Chris Mühlroth, and in this episode, I am excited to welcome Tom Kegode. Tom, did I pronounce this correctly?
You did pronounce it correctly, so thank you very much, Chris. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
That's great. Tom, about you, and you joined Lloyds Banking Group in, I guess, 2009, right, as a cashier, then quickly processing to a highly varied and successful career across the organization. You're right now working with Lloyds people and leaders to create great places to work. And today we'll talk about the toolbox for high impact hybrid work. And as always, we start straight away with a short 60 seconds introduction sprint. This is all about you, your career, and your current role. So, for the next 60 seconds, the virtual stage is all yours, Tom. Let's go.
Yeah, so I've been with the organisation for it will actually be 14 years this month, so quite some time. But I've had a number of different careers across the bank. So Lloyds Banking Group, the largest sort of digital UK retail and commercial bank in the UK. I started as a cashier, doing a number of sort of roles across the branch network before I moved into what was sort of our innovation team and the digital part of the organisation. So I spent a significant amount of my time, the last sort of 5 years, leading our people innovation activities as part of the group digital and transformation area of the bank. And then I moved across into what is now people and places. So, it is what it says on the tin, right? So it's that kind of what are the buildings that we've got, and how do we make sure that we're creating the right environments for our people? So that's been sort of leading throughout the pandemic. How do we evolve the future of work? How do we lean into what's next for work and hybrid working, and start to shape what comes next? So really exciting to be involved in such a sort of topical as a workplace nerd, as I would class myself. It's an interesting space to be in at the moment.
It certainly is. And for everybody who cannot see the video stream right now, Tom, what does your hoodie say? I love it.
So my hoodie says "Grow with Purpose." So we are on a journey at Lloyds Banking Group. We're emerging, and our sort of key areas across our strategy is around grow, focus, and change, which is a real change for us. And one of the things that we're doing is putting all of our leaders through this program of Grow with Purpose, and talking about how we start to shift that mindset from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, and start to think about what are the things we need to do to be in that growth phase. So this lovely hoodie, which has got a splash of colour on the back of it as well,
even on the back. I got it. All right, that's nice.
It's from one of those to try and create that culture movement.
That's pretty cool. Let's continue to get to know you just a little better. Tom, I do have 3 sentence starters for you, and I would like you to complete those sentences. So I start the sentence and you complete. Number 1, the one thing, not the only thing, but the one thing I do every day that sets me up for success is...
So I like to go for a walk where I can. So I live by the coast, as you may hear with some of the seagulls we've already heard this morning. I live in Plymouth in the southwest. So when I'm working from home, I always try and get out to see the sea, just to be by it. Gives me that kind of sense of calm and a sense of sort of reflection of, there's a lot of stuff that's a lot bigger than you here. So get out to the sea or go for a walk wherever I can.
That's great. That's great to hear. And number 2, the book I have given most as a gift to someone is...
Reaching over to my bookshelf,
Sure.
Live and in the moment. So this is the book that I've given the most to people. It's called The Joy of Work by Bruce Daisley. I've done a lot of work with Bruce around this when he first relaunched this, but back in sort of 2019, we did some work with him at Lloyds on that as well, on what was Bright Blue Monday. And I think it's a really simple, almost guide to how you can do things and make an impact really quickly with his 30 ways to fall in love with your job again. Now, my mantra is, right, if we spend so much time at work, we need to make sure that we're having a good time, right? So, and this is just a really practical toolkit for people to use and to take away. So highly recommend Sunday Times bestseller, The Joy of Work by Bruce Daisley.
Nice one. Okay, thanks for that. And definitely take that book recommendation for myself as well. And finally, number 3, Tom, one thing I am excited about this year, either personally or professionally, is...
So I think professionally, it's another really interesting transition year that we're entering into in the sort of workforce and workplace society. I think we're starting to see so many changes when it comes to people that are reimagining the way that they use offices. So I think hybrid working in particular continues to evolve, and we're at another sort of turning point again where people are starting to think, okay, we've been in this for a year now. I'm already seeing those kind of changes where people are starting to take more active steps to spend more time connecting in person, and they're really seeing the value. Like I've just done sort of 2 large conferences over the last 2 weeks with different teams in the bank, and that element of connection is the first time they've been coming back together. So I think that is really exciting for me. I think that so much of the magic that happens at work happens when we're connecting in a social environment. So I really think that there's going to be a lot more socializing going on as we go through it. I think it's going to be a great summer. I think we'll see lots of barbecues. Is what I think as well.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I would be pretty sure about that. Talking about social environments, Tom, I found your Twitter account. And, at your Twitter page, you describe yourself as a professional troublemaker, disrupting traditional ways of doing stuff, so stuff in quotes, through #innovation. Let's talk about that. Who do you give the most trouble to and how?
So I think who I give the most trouble to. So I would describe myself as a friendly disruptor, right? So I think it's almost I question everything. I don't. If someone tells me something can't be done, I don't believe them, right? I think there's always ways to do that. The people I probably give the most trouble to are the people that are very set in their ways and in that fixed mindset zone. People that tell me, well, we've always done things this way. I don't believe that is a credible answer. So I will find ways to demonstrate, and I will find ways to take action. Another one of my sort of strap lines that I like to talk about and use is move fast and do the right thing. So, if we can see an opportunity to make a change and make a difference, like we need to make that move fast. We don't, we haven't got the time to wait for this, right? Today's the slowest it's ever going to be in our lifetime. The pace of change we're seeing, the compressing time horizon. So I think I'm a troublemaker for a lot of people, but hopefully in a friendly way, and I hopefully to disrupting their thinking into a way that makes them think, oh, there's another opportunity to do things in a slightly different way here.
Yeah. Okay, Tom, and can you maybe provide an example of a traditional way of doing stuff that you have disrupted friendly? Just any example that comes to your mind?
Yeah. So I mean, there's a classic way for me, a classic way of disrupting a traditional approach is through communications. So often I think there's ways where we have to we believe we have to communicate in a certain way. So we have this sort of mindset that we have to move we have to go through certain hoops to do certain things. And I think actually if you can open up communications as a tool, so using tools to make things asynchronous, using tools in a way that enable anybody to be involved in the work if it's possible. So many times we work in a kind of defensive way when we don't need to. And I think that's the kind of the biggest one for me. So one of the ways that I've done that, instead of sort of trying to put meetings upon meetings in people's calendars, I say, right, what we're going to do here is we're going to open an open chat. You can all be part of this. The status updates will be pushed into this mechanism, and I run a whole program like that. So when we first introduced coming back to offices, very small team, but very small. I mean, it was a team of 1. So it was me sort of looking at how do we start this kind of work reconnected movement where we speak to all colleagues and encourage that connection and community. And it just simply wasn't feasible to have calls to engage people on specific things, right? Because that would have taken up all my time and I wouldn't have been able to do the work that I'm looking to do. So I found that solution to be using that asynchronous way of communicating. Everyone remains in the loop because everyone wants to be in the loop, but also you can make sure that people are getting the information they need, but they can also dip into it. So it nudges those behavioral changes that we want to see as well.
Understood. Now, and here's an interesting one. So, let's talk about hybrid work for a minute or two. So, we just had this. Obviously, you're also calling in from home right now. Beautiful place near the coast. So that's great. Now, we've also seen some leading organizations call everyone back to the office, right? So take, Tesla CEO, I guess it was in mid 2022, and just recently Amazon CEO Andy Jassy, early March 2023, calling people back to offices. Now, let's talk about the hybrid work for, just a bit. Why do we actually need hybrid work?
So I think we've realised the benefits of flexibility, okay, over the last few years. There's a kind of a shift where we've seen the movement from what was work-life balance. So I've stopped talking about work-life balance, really. I've started talking a lot more about work-life harmony, because these things are not trade-offs one against the other, and that's where hybrid work enables that level of flexibility for us to really prioritize both the things that are meaningful for us in our personal lives, but also what's meaningful for us in our work lives as well. So that kind of flexibility, I think once you've had a taste of that, it's really difficult to change, and we need to sort of prioritize that. But I also think there's, offices have a really, really key part to play in the future of work. They really do, right? So we are investing in our office estate and our office buildings across the UK to make them great places to go. So the difference here is that our offices need to be places that almost those hubs that you look forward to going to, where you can supercharge your activities via that human connection. So we started in the early days of the pandemic talking about how offices were a place that we go to collaborate. And I became convinced that that's a myth, right? Because we go to offices for a sense of human connection. We go for an office for a sense of community. If we have those two things, human connection plus community equals collaboration. So collaboration is almost the byproduct of those two things. So it's how we make sure that our offices are now set up for that. People don't want to go to offices where you've got a postage stamp size monitor, right? Which is going to be, it's from sort of, way back in the day when work was, it's sort of when we were working, the first initial computers. And let's not, I've been around to some of our offices and I've spotted a few of those monitors still knocking around, and all kinds of things that sort of show that doesn't work. And also the other thing is we've now set our teams up, because we had to move so quickly during the pandemic. We were able to set our teams up with really excellent work from home spaces. So they had the technology, they had the kit, the environment. I'm at a standing desk right now in my home office. This was something that we were able to mobilize for our teams and for the people that needed them for home, to make sure they had a safe environment. So that's another really interesting one, because it's that kind of concept of health and safety and well-being that kind of bleeds now into the home. So what's my home working setup environment like? And that's why another reason why offices will play such an important part, because we recognize that right across our organization, we have people at very different life stages. We have people there with very different sort of living arrangements. Multiple generations in a household. You may be living in one room, right? So from when you think about how that impacts you and your work-life harmony, if you are eating in the same room as you're sleeping and you're working, then actually it's really, really important to have somewhere else that you can go, that other space where you can go, and which is why we really believe that offices will be a key part in the future. But they just need to be excellent.
Yeah, they talk. So I 100% agree with the first point you made, that work-life balance. Sorry for the word, but I think it's a bullshit discussion. Achieving work-life balance is not a good thing, because what you do is actually you kind of balance pain, which is work, and pleasure, which is life. It becomes a zero-sum game, but that doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you balance work if you actually have fun doing work, or if you have a good time doing work? So why balance that? I never got this discussion, so I 100% agree to that.
Absolutely. And it's this concept of we want to try and create an organization and a place where people come to work, where people really love what they do, right? That's what we want to do. We are a large financial institution. In a really interesting, exciting phase. But with so many colleagues, so we've got around sort of 58,000 colleagues, all with very different needs and requirements. But we want to make sure that we've got a real purpose, right? Helping Britain prosper is our purpose, and that is, it means something to the people, and we want to make sure that people really feel connected to that purpose, and are really excited and are happy and love to come to work here. So it's a combination of creating the right environments for that to happen and for people to thrive, providing the right opportunities for people to develop their skills with us, but also looking at how do we start to create the propositions from a people perspective that are fit for this next stage of our journey.
Absolutely. I mean, if you feel so exhausted after work, if you need to balance what you're doing during work time, go work somewhere else, right? That it just doesn't work out. Yeah.
Exactly. And one of the things we've realized, right, is there is a level of the concept of VUCA, which we've talked about, like sort of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, is only going to rise. And we saw of people starting to make across the sort of global workforce, people making decisions post pandemic, thinking, do you know what, I want to make a change to my life, right? So that's kind of and that, I think that will continue. People will think, right, well, what is it I want to do? What gives me purpose, my own personal purpose, and how do I link to finding something that gives me joy, and finding a place that I love to work? And that's what we're trying to create at Lloyds Banking Group, a place where colleagues and people love to work, and want to come and work with us.
Absolutely. And let's now go down, the rabbit hole and talk about some of the tools that you actually deployed or are deploying to, make hybrid work impactful for both sides. But before we do that, let's play a quick game, Tom. The game is called, it's an either-or game. It's really simple, right? So the idea is I give you two options, and you choose one of the options and then spend 1 or 2 sentences each to briefly explain your choice. And the key is speed, yeah. So not thinking too much, but just shoot. Okay. Number one is tied to what we had in the beginning. Which one is more important to you? Either having a morning or an evening routine to set you up for success.
So I think for me, the evening routine. So the evening routine is slightly different to the morning routine. So the morning routine sets me up for the day. I think the evening routine, I'm a kind of opposite kind of worker. So I work better in the evening. So my evening wind down routine is not as important as getting myself out and in the sun in the morning. So the morning routine is the one for me.
Cool. All right. And if you had to choose one in the future, 100%. Yeah, back to physical offices, 100%, or working in the metaverse, 100%.
Back to physical offices, 100%.
Yeah, human connections. Got it. Okay. And finally, would you rather live in a world with no social media or no music streaming services?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I would have to say no social media, because I'm a DJ also. So music is so important to me in so many ways. I listen to music all the time. It's probably my most used app is Spotify.
Got it. Okay, then of course it's social media. Got it. Okay, cool. Let's get back to the toolbox. So let's talk about the toolbox for high impact hybrid work. Let's maybe talk about a few, concrete examples of tools that you already have tried or that you recommend for high impact hybrid work, and how you've, deployed them in practice. So just maybe 2-3 examples that are used and that listeners can take away from this episode with you.
Yeah. So I think so from a toolkit perspective, I think there's a couple of things. So line managers need to be able to have conversations. So building that kind of that ability to have empathetic conversation on a personal level is really important, and how you provide the tools for people to do that. Yep. So one of the ways we did that was to encourage ways of working conversations to happen both on an individual level and at a team level. And it's kind of how you strike the balance, and it's talking about striking that right balance. So we shared a framework for those conversations that talked about what's right for the individual, what's right for the team, and what's right for the organization. So it's striking that balance and getting the sweet spot in the middle of that. And line managers are critical in those conversations and understanding that, but also with the ability to use their own pragmatism to certain situations and scenarios. So I think that is that's a sort of key one, and upskilling and giving your line managers and your leaders the ability and support to have those conversations in the right way is sort of first and foremost. So starting with people.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to the other one, so the other part of that toolkit, so will be the workplace itself. So enabling that people are able to set up to do the work from wherever. You've got that kind of expectation around the way that you work. So you can almost start to set up those kind of almost etiquette around or workplace principles, working principles that will enable that flexibility, that built-in sort of approach to hybrid working. I've been using a word a lot recently called, would I just say hybridity? I don't know if it's a word, but I've created it, so I'm using it. So it's like what I mean when I talk about hybridity is, we talk about hybrid. That doesn't just mean at home, or in an office, right? So we need to think about the hybridity of our meetings, for example. So I'll give you an example. If you think about a meeting, how do we make sure that experience, or the end-to-end journey of that experience has sort of hybridity built into it?
Yeah.
Now, what that might look like is that you have a meeting that takes place, which might be, so let's say we've got an ideation workshop or ideation session taking place on Tuesday. We might set that up on a Monday or potentially the week before, right? So we set that up in a virtual channel. So we start the conversation in a virtual channel, and we ask people to start to submit their ideas through there. Then we follow up into that ideation session with almost semi-formed ideas, and we have a richer conversation around that. So, and the reason for that is that you're able to then start to think about how do you engage an inclusive population of people in that meeting. From a neurodiverse perspective, some people will much prefer to have the opportunity to reflect and think about those ideas, then come and have a sort of a richer conversation around those. So you need to think about that end-to-end journey. We need to think about all the elements of our work in those end-to-end journeys, so that we can think about how do we make sure that everybody's getting the best out of these experiences by building the hybridity into those moments. So it's almost, rather than just putting a meeting in and thinking, right, we go there, we come up with ideas.
Yeah.
What are the parts where technology can support us, and our learnings from the last 2 years of working in hybrid ways can support us to think about how we make this a more inclusive experience for all?
That's really interesting because one thing we figured quite fast after moving to home office only and then hybrid is an issue about creativity. Obviously, creativity is being fostered way much easier. I don't know, in front of a coffee machine when meeting a colleague or some colleague of yours, or I don't know, drawing something up the whiteboard and talking about that in a room where the energy is just different than actually sitting in front of a screen, right? So that's one of the issues we figured in hybrid. If you do not ingest hybridity, in the best way. So. What can we do about that? What can we do, in the hybrid setting to actually foster creativity and innovation? Is it that you design things more specifically, on purpose to be helping creativity? How do you do that?
So I think there's a couple of ways. And with like I said, from an innovation background, I've always been sort of very thoughtful about ideation and how we can bring everybody involved into this conversation. So one of the things we did learn during sort of when we were working in a much more virtual environment was that it kind of democratized some of that creativity and some of that innovation, because you didn't need to get to the room to be in that room. You could be in that room from wherever you were. So one of the things which I did was a series of meetings, effectively, of sort of workshops, really short, sharp workshops that I call an ideation kickabout. That's 30 minutes. It was a 30-minute slot, which we covered 3 big questions. What are these 3 big questions? We'd be working with somebody from a part of the business that needed feedback from colleagues on those big questions. So one of them, for example, was our offices of the future, and what sort of this concept of a destination office, which is how we've started to shape what our strategy looks like now. But what we would do is keep it really simple. I think often there's a lot of ways where we can default to a tool to do something, where actually we want to get people being creative in the tool that they're in, rather than focusing on using that particular tool. So the example I would give you for that is, there's plenty of whiteboard apps out there. We've got, we use Microsoft Whiteboard, but for a lot of people, they're not necessarily up to speed with that. So they've got to get up to speed with that, then write their idea. However, what we found is that people that were using Microsoft Teams on a daily basis, right? So it was integrated into their ways of working. So what we would do is do the ideation in the chat. So it's live in the channel. So you don't have to move out of there. You can just drop a comment. So we'd say, right, okay, this is the big question. What do you think? Want to hear from you? We want to make it inclusive, right? So we want to hear from you on the. So put your hands up. Use your hands to raise your hand to give your idea, share your feedback. But also, we really want to see your comments in the chat. So so stick your ideas and your comments in the chat as well. So we've got a multi-channel way of capturing that creativity from the room and the ideas that are coming through from them. So so by building it into the workflow, rather than trying to sort of direct people to specific platforms that will enable them to, it adds an extra element of friction to getting that idea out on the table. So we want to try and make it as easy as possible.
And I was just about to ask that, right? So how can organizations ensure that innovation efforts, might be ideation, might be different things, are actually integrated with day-to-day business operations, right? Rather than seeing as separate or even competing priorities.
Yeah, and I think it's almost how you build that as into your mindset. So I guess that, and that's where that kind of growth mindset comes in, right? So it's how do we start to build that into our thinking? How, if we've got a team that is looking at product development and design, how do they build into their daily rhythms capturing ideas and ideation? So is it that at the end of their stand-up they say quick round of ideas, or they have a place where they can sort of jot down a collective sort of whiteboard of sort of big like moonshot ideas that we'd love to do, and then there's it's just building it into the rhythms and building it into your existing sort of ways of working and processes.
That's the thing, because honestly, the best ideas I had, I didn't come up with them in front of a screen. Doesn't happen. I don't come up with the best ideas. It's I don't know, in the shower or on a walk or wherever it is, or while reading a book on the couch with a glass of wine or whatever. It doesn't really matter. But it's not in front of the screen. It's not in a structured step-by-step ideation session moderated in front of some digital whiteboard, for example. That's the thing.
Exactly. And I think there's a couple of other sort of tips and tricks that I would say, right? So one of those ones, you're completely right. You never have your best idea at your desk, right? The other thing is keep them short, sharp, and punchy. What I want after an ideation session is people say, well, what happens to me quite often, I put them in, it's like, oh, I'm not sure this is long enough, because people are used to sort of like hour-long meetings, or like, I want people leaving those sessions thinking that was amazing, that was so fast, like that, the energy that I felt there, and I'm excited about the ideas we discussed. So how do you make it as punchy as you possibly can? 30 minutes, 25 minutes, that's the kind of time you want. Also, how do you start to inspire that creativity by the mechanism of the meeting? So it may be that you say, we're going to do a creative session, a thought session. I'd love this to be a walking meeting. So all of you get out and about, it's in the summer, like let's all go for our individual walks. We'll do it on a call. We don't necessarily need to, we can have one person that's scribing, and we'll all go out and sort of walk and take inspiration from our surroundings.
That's cool.
Or do we do that as a walking meeting collectively, and we sort of set a space that we want to go to? Do we do a meeting in the park in the summer? That's one of the best sort of offsites. Well, not offsite, it was a team meeting that we had, was in a park when I was in the innovation team, in a park in central London in the summer, and we did it as almost a bit of a picnic, but we had some team building in there. We had a bit of ideation and talking about some of the work that we were doing. But taking yourself out of that environment really does help to spark that creativity. You're completely right.
I think so, right? So that's an interesting toolbox to draw some tools out of that. That's great. Now, if we look in, we can't look into the future, but if we look towards the future, personal opinion, what is your vision for the evolution of hybrid work, right? So let's say a couple of years from now, and also, innovation in the workplace. And how do you see these concepts evolving and shaping the way how we work?
Yeah, so personally, I think, hybrid it will continue to evolve. There's so many external factors that will continue to impact that. But we found that flexibility. I don't believe that flexibility will go. I think that flexibility will only increase, but be less rigid. So we'd almost have that sort of more a day-to-day level of flexibility. I think I'm really interested in the concept of asynchronous working. I think that's something that I think we'll definitely see that kind of that rise of. I think there's going to be some real opportunities when it comes to some of the AI solutions that we're now starting to see come into the market. I mean, looking at what sort of fascinates me around the journey that we've been on over the last couple of years is that typically, as an innovation person, I would talk in horizons, right? Horizon
Yeah.
1, 2, and
Yeah,
3.
yeah.
What I'm now seeing is that those horizons are starting to become compressed. We're starting to see things that we would have thought be Horizon 2 or Horizon 3 start just go straight to market, straight to the user. When I'm thinking about OpenAI and ChatGPT, for example, but also the ability of people to sort of pivot and change their proposition. Again, something we learned throughout the pandemic. So there's all these kind of trends where we saw gin distilleries switching to making hand sanitizer overnight.
Yep.
People have now realized they can react and change. So that VUCA element, where before was almost this kind of thing that was we talked about, we now know we can operate within. I think that's really exciting because it means we're going to start to see that shift across multiple ways of working. I think communities will continue to rise in offices. I think that their offices will start to become more of a hub within as well as the sort of in-work community in the local communities that they serve.
Yep.
So we'll start to see them being sort of used more multi-purpose, and how do we bring communities into those as well. So I think there's a range of opportunities, which is all based on learning. But what I really believe is that it will continue to change. So we are at what I would probably describe now as hybrid 2.0. There will be likely a 3.0 and a 4.0. Sure. The factors that sit around that will determine what those things are. But I think now we've realized that we can adapt, and we've realized that we can change. It's only going to be more of an opportunity to continue with that experimental mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, talking about hand sanitizers, I had Distill and then Caroline Sniman, who is the group innovation leader at Distill, actually also in the podcast. She was exactly sharing that story, how they moved in weeks. 1, 2, 3 weeks or whatever, from building one of the world's most admired alcoholic beverages to actually producing hand sanitizer during the pandemic. It's exactly that story.
Yeah. And it's that concept of swarming around things, right? So it's almost like when and this is the thing, and again with innovation, right? Crisis drives innovation. It's easy to innovate when we're in a crisis mode.
True.
The real magic is to be able to keep that pace and energy and urgency when you haven't got that crisis that's chasing you down. So, for example, we were able to see teams come together and achieve things we never would have thought would have been possible. Mobilizing teams to work from home overnight, right? I mean, I'm thinking about contact centers full of people where we would have never would have thought that would have been possible before. But bringing different teams together, the right expertise, giving them the empowerment and the accountability to make the decisions that needed to get the work done, speeds up, removes waste in the process, and it's how we make sure that we continue with that same momentum as we move into the next phase.
I could not agree more. Absolutely. Right. So let's try to summarize, Tom. We're close to the end of this episode. Let's try to summarize for listeners. What are the, let's say, 3 key actionable recommendations that you want listeners to take away from this episode with you?
So I think the first one is, and it's something that I always say, is be curious. Be curious about what's going on in the workplace. Be curious about what's going on with your people. Be curious about the leaders that you have in your organization and how you help to set them up for success. So how think about all of those things in terms of curiosity. I think about the role that the office plays, and really start to think about how you define those key purposes and what gets done where. So thinking about sort of what's best done at home, what's best done in the office, and how does that hybrid sort of scale look. And I think the final thing I would say, like, have fun along the way. Test and learn is what we need to continue. We need to continue this experimental mindset, have fun, and be prepared and sort of create that environment where it's safe for people to come with ideas, test them, and perhaps they fail, right? First attempt in learning. So think about how we are able to create those environments that enable people to come with ideas, test them, learn, either move them forward or drop them in a really quick way. So we need to keep that pace and energy going as well. But
move
have fun
fast. Exactly. That's the thing. I totally agree. And finally, Tom, before we close, if you look back on your professional career, what was your greatest innovation rockstar moment to date?
I think innovation rockstar moment.
Yeah.
So I think for me, I had I hosted an innovation community event back in sort of 2018. It was the sort of first of its type that we'd done, where we brought across innovators both from inside the organization and outside the organization together to really talk about innovation. And it was one of the favorite stages that I've ever had. I think it was a round stage, so I was able to sort of walk around that. I was hosting the event, but we had multiple streams of sort of workshops, practical, keynote, roundtable, a live hackathon that run throughout as well. So, and then they pitched at the end and panels and external speakers. So for me, I think that was just like something which we did, and we did it in this kind of concept of nurturing innovation. It was in the Royal Horticultural Society in London. And I think, that was kind of the place that I think was, for me, having that circular stage that I could walk around and give a keynote on was probably the rockstar moment for me.
That's the thing, because a rockstar moment often happens on a stage, right? So if it's even a circular stage, even better. All right, that's kind of nice.
Exactly,
right.
Yeah.
Congratulations to that rockstar moment. And that's it, Tom. We reached the end of this episode. Thanks so much again for being my guest on this episode. It was a pleasure to listen to you, to learn from the tools in your toolbox, in Lloyd Banking Group's toolbox, and certainly there is maybe one or two tools for every listener to take away and foster innovation, fuel innovation, and make sure hybrid work has the highest impact possible. Thanks for being my guest, Tom.
Thank you very much, Chris. Great to have a conversation.
All right, and to everybody listening or watching, if you enjoyed this episode, simply leave us a comment on this episode or drop us an email at info@innovationrockstars.show. Now, that's it. Thanks for listening. Take care. Bye-bye.
That was Innovation Rockstar Tom Kegode from the Lloyds Banking Group on the toolbox for high-impact hybrid work. If you would like to give us feedback on this episode, just shoot us a note at info@innovationrockstars.show. For more inspiring innovation stories, visit our website at www.innovationrockstars.show or browse through our Innovation Rockstars channel on all major podcast platforms.